Hey guys, Tonight Marine here. Just real quick, giving you a oh jeez, kind of a preview. Doing Marine Corps stories here in a minute, which I'll introduce myself again because I'm cool like that. Um, but I figure I should tell you, just let you know, one, why I'm filming Minecraft for this because it takes up way less space and it takes way less time to upload to YouTube, and also kind of giving you a preview of that special project that I mentioned. Oh, well, I mentioned it in a video I'm going to post after this. Man, having issues keeping track of stuff. Uh, but yeah, working on a special project with a friend of mine, and this is kind of it. So, yeah, guys, on to the Marine Corps stories. Hey guys, Tonight Marine here with another Marine Corps stories. This week, I thought I would break from the norm a little bit and answer some questions. I've gotten a bunch of questions through comments and then through people contacting me through PM and whatnot. So I figured I would take some time to answer those. So yeah, let's get right to it. The first one is, and I wrote these all down. If I forgot any, I apologize. If I did forget your question, just feel free to ask me again, and I'll get to it. Um, First one is, what is being on a patrol like? That is a pretty good question. I mean, your very first patrol, like your very first foot patrol, is a pretty um, decently nerve-wracking thing. I think everyone's a little nervous during it, simply because while you've trained over and over on what to do, um, for your patrols, you know how to react if something happens. It's still nerve-wracking because just the factor of not knowing. But I know for me, it's pretty. What's the word I'm thinking of? It's pretty, focused on what was going on. I was very, um, can't think of the right word, attentive maybe. Because you try to take in everything. You're keeping your eyes open. You're constantly looking around. Always looking for IEDs, looking for suspicious activity, um, and stuff like that. Anything out of the norm really, and and eventually you kind of get to feel the place, and you get to know some of the people there, so you'll be able to talk to them, and you know eventually it's almost like shooting the shit with some of them if they're cool. You'll have kids come up to you, at least in Iraq. I can't really speak for Afghanistan, although I can't imagine it's way too much different. But you have kids come up to you, and they want food and stuff from you, and I know those little Iraqi kids, man. Those kids would try to steal everything off you. If you had grenades that were hanging off your flak, or if you had stuff in your drop pouch, in your cargo pockets, it'd come up and try to rummage through all that crap. Um, it was annoying as hell, but you just got to be tough with them and tell them they can't do that. Um, but it is what it is, really. And so yeah, you eventually kind of get the feel of it. You know what the civilian population's like, so you definitely get a good idea of when something's wrong. Um, but yes, I mean, first time you're pretty nervous, but you eventually kind of get into a groove, and you don't want to get complacent necessarily. You don't want to get too comfortable with it. With the environment you're in, but I think a little bit of the edge comes off eventually. All right. Let's see here. Actually, we'll spin this into a thing. Someone's asked me what I would consider suspicious activity while on a patrol or a convoy, even. Um, and those vary a little bit, but for the most part, it's it's obvious. Like you'll get to know when you first get there. You're not necessarily going to see some of the stuff, but after a while, you get to understand what the daily norm is like. So, for example, if say on a Monday you're walking through the fish market at like noon, and everyone's there, they're doing business, walking around, buying their food, selling their food, whatever, and then the next day you go in there, same time, and it's not a holiday or anything, and it's completely dead. There's nobody around. It's just really quiet. It's almost like a ghost town. Chances are you need to be ready to go, because a lot of times what would happen is the insurgents in Afghanistan. I'm sure the Taliban would warn the civilians that something's going to happen, and so they would tell them either they would tell them to leave, or the civilians obviously are intelligent enough to realize, hey, bad stuff's going to happen here. We need to pack up the family and go. And so, I mean, that's a huge indicator when the regular daily activities aren't happening. Um, a second is um, if things are out of place, if, say, a dead animal is kind of laying in the road, if there's, because they would put IEDs in dead animals, and, sorry, I'm freaking cold again, and if there was, say, fresh road work, like a hole that got dug, and it's like you could tell it, they kind of filled it in because the dirt or the sand or whatever is different color. Um, if there's random new piles of trash, like there's trash everywhere, at least in Iraq. Um, Shit was all over the place, but there wouldn't just randomly be a stretch of road or part of a town where there's no trash, and then all of a sudden next day you come back and there's a huge pile of trash. It just didn't work like that. So small stuff like that is going to grab your attention, and then you react how you've been trained to react. Which in that case, it's you're pretty fairly certain it's an IED, so you're gonna do your best to cordon it off. In other words, get people on all sides of it, and then call an EOD, possibly QRF. I mean, it depends on your unit's rules that they have set, but the thing you really got to be careful with is if they're trying to daisy chain it. So if they have one that's an obvious ID, and you send people around to the other side, you have to make sure that they're watching for anything else that might be less suspicious, because they're trying to basically daisy chain. So if a convoy or patrol goes through, they can set off both bombs or all three or how many they have and take out the whole patrol instead of having just one bomb go off. And so you just really got to keep an eye out for that. You got to watch out for wires, any telltale signs of an IED. But yeah, let's see. What was the hardest part of boot camp for me? Oh, that's a good question. It's a tough one because, I mean, all of boot camp sucked ass, but I don't know. Like, the physical aspects, like, weren't that bad. Like, they were tough, certainly. They certainly push you to the edge of your sanity, basically. But I don't know. I think, man, I think it would be the lack of sleep initially, because through high school and stuff, and I did wrestling. We had some pretty early hours with wrestling, but I always generally got a good 7-8 hours of sleep a night. And when you go do the Crucible, you're getting, it's like 4 hours, maybe less if you have Firewatch. Plus the constant physical activity. Like, I was in really good shape when I went to boot camp, but I wasn't used to just constant physical activities. Because literally from the second you wake up, 04, 05, you're moving and doing some sort of physical activity the whole day until you're in bed. And during the Crucible, you woke up at 04, you went to sleep at midnight. So you were up the whole 20 hours, and you're constantly hiking back and forth to different activities. You're lifting stuff, you're carrying fellow recruits, you're doing all this sort of stuff. And I think that, coupled with only the 4 hours of sleep, really really was not in my favor. And then two, kind of away from the Crucible, is the how much cleaning you have to do. You clean so much, it's ridiculous. Whether it's your rifle or your gear or your squad bay, you are just constantly scrubbing something. And I hate cleaning. I'm good at it. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that I'm amazing at it, but I just couldn't stand doing it. And now I try not to clean at all. Like, I still keep everything organized, but I don't necessarily clean. It drives my wife crazy. It's funny. Alright, moving right along. What is my take on officers? Officers are just like anyone else, I guess. You get good officers and you get bad officers. Bad officers are the ones who, one, just really don't give a crap about junior Marines. Or two, they're just more focused on their career. They're with your unit simply because it makes their file look good. So they do the job as far as higher command is concerned, but they don't. The Marines are treated less than stellar, and you'll know those kind of officers right when you get them, right when you get there. Especially, I mean, if your sergeants and corporals are good at what they do, you won't be able to see it through them. But nobody's perfect, and you're gonna get a vibe right away of how certain people act. When certain officers are around. If the officer's a douchebag and just is in it for himself, then it'll be apparent in the way people treat him. Especially after you learn how your sergeants and corporals act normally. But then you'll get those good officers, which I had. I had my CO when we went to Japan was easily probably the single best command officer that I'd ever had. This guy was awesome. He was all about his Marines. He loved the job. He was always down, in our case, on the gun line, hanging out with us, shooting shit, just seeing how we were doing, which is exactly what you want in an officer, and you want someone who you can generally tell cares about you, because if your CO doesn't care about you, you're pretty much SOL. So I mean, and it was almost bad that I had him as essentially. I had a CO before him, but he left right away, and technically my very, very first CO was an asshole. But this guy was the second one, the one I went to Japan with, was just awesome. And it almost sucks that I had him, for my first deployment, if you count Japan as a deployment, because I kind of, got to see the light and happy side of things when it comes to chain of command. The whole chain of command in Japan was amazing. But then after that, when I went to Iraq, I went to a different battery, and it's freaking terrible. Let's just say I don't want to get into too many analogies. It might piss people off, but let's just say that there's a lot of other people I'd rather go into a combat deployment with, because terrible. But yeah, so I mean, officers in general are just like anybody else. And if you haven't seen Generation Kill, which was a HBO series, I want to say there's like 10 episodes. Basic premise of it is they're with, I want to say, 1st Recon when they hit Iraq in 03 during the invasion, and it just trails one or two of their platoons as they deal with the shenanigans that's involved in an invasion these days. And they do a very good job of showing, one, what it's like to be lower enlisted in a situation like that, and two, they definitely show you the difference between good officers, bad officers, and incompetent officers. So you'll see that. So I highly recommend watching that if you can. Very good series. Have I ever been asked if I wanted to go through Recon and Doc or Scout Sniper School? They have come through when I was in 29 Palms. They came through, and they basically do like, at least for us, I'm not sure how it works for the infantry, but for artillery, they basically have a, what do you call it, like an announcement base-wide, posters, flyers, whatever else, saying that, the recon guys are going to be there. If you want to go try out, you got to get permission from your chain of command, and then they give you the go-ahead, and you go, show up at this date and this time, at this part of the base. And then you go, and if you do well enough, they might take you into their actual school, and you go from there. Infantry, I think, well, they do have the option to do that. I think it might be a little bit different, that you kind of get recommended for it. If there's any infantry guys that watch this, please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I've talked to a few who kind of got recommended to go, and so they did it. But yeah. Let's see. What do they do for promotion ceremonies? Promotion ceremonies are one of the staples of the Marine Corps. They're awesome, although they can be a bit boring. But it really depends on how many people are getting promoted, because usually they try to do battalion-wide, or at least our battalion did, try to do battalion-wide promotions. So the first day of every month is when they do promotions, and they'll get everybody who's up for promotion. They'll have them stand in the way back behind all the companies or batteries in your battalion, and then battalion CO and Sergeant Major come out, and then Sergeant Major calls all the promotees up. They march up, and they stop in front of the CO. They salute him, and then the CO, if there's NCOs, they go first. So if there's a sergeant getting promoted, he'll go first, and then any corporals that are being promoted, and Lance, and then PFCs. And if it's the NCOs, he has to read the NCO Creed, which takes only a minute or two. It's not too long. And then they'll generally ask if the Marine would like somebody to promote him. And sometimes they do. Sometimes the guys want their wives to promote them. Sometimes guys want their best buds to promote them. Guys who save their asses in bad situations. They want them to promote them, whatever. And most battalion COs are pretty cool about letting that happen. So those Marines who get called forward, they'll go up there and pin the Marine, and then they'll move on down the line. Once they're done, the guys will basically get sent back, and then the formation's generally over. This battalion CO might have to talk for a minute or whatever, but then once you get promoted, you're not allowed. Technically, you're not supposed to do this, but you're supposed to keep your the backings of your chevron off. So it's just a little spike or two spikes that go through the cloth of your uniform. You're supposed to keep those off because everybody, that same rank or higher than you is supposed to be able to come up and punch you on your new rank, and those little things will freaking stab into you, and by the end of the day, you're gonna be sore. You're gonna have little stab marks and blood, on your the inside of your camis and stuff. And if you're an NCO, the people are gonna, especially if you get promoted to corporal, is when you get your blood stripe, and guys are gonna come up and knee you in the thigh as hard as they can, and so you'll have guys that can barely walk, which is pretty funny, because especially if you've gone through it, you know what's coming for them, and so it's amusing to help that along. Um, let's see. Hold on, I'm gonna look through my paper here. What was... here it is. I'll make this my last one. I realized the time. What was my favorite part about artillery? Now that is a pretty broad question because frankly, almost everything about artillery is cool in one shape or another. Having to do maintenance on the howitzer sucks. The hurry up and wait aspect of artillery is terrible. But I mean, getting paid to literally shoot at stuff and blow it up is very enjoyable. I think my favorite, if I had to pick just one thing, my favorite part about artillery is when you shoot the Charge 8 stick, which is, at least when I was in, I mean, they might have upgraded, but at the time, was the biggest charge that you can use in the howitzer. It's basically the gunpowder that sends the round off. And that thing, when you shoot those, your whole body feels it. Like the little, when an explosion goes off, you get the concussion, and it kind of like zips right through you. This is very similar, except that obviously it's a controlled explosion, but man, you feel it. And if you're not paying attention and you have a guy who's towards the front of the howitzer, which they shouldn't be, because you can get your ass hurt and killed doing that, but if they are up there, man, you can get your ass knocked down by the concussion from that. But then, especially the 777s, those howitzers move so much when you shoot. When you shoot them, even if you're dug in properly, if the ground just isn't compact enough, that howitzer is going to jump back. Like we've had it. I've been almost taken out by that thing. Been hit by it multiple times when I was chiefing and I was standing behind it, gave the command to fire, and I just wasn't realizing how soft the ground was, and howitzer shoots back and smashes into you, and shit hurts like hell. But the 777s, it's pretty hard to get injured, or seriously injured, I guess, when the howitzer jumps back. Because at least with the 777, the whole tube would shoot back, and there was nothing. Like if you're behind the tube, you're fucked. But the 777, the way it's designed, the tube shoots all the way back, but it's not going to stick out where it could hurt anybody. And so then that, and then I guess the secondary thing is actually, if you're in a position to watch the rounds hit, like sometimes you'll be up on a hill, and you're just able to see, like you're not shooting far enough away where you can't see the explosions, and so it's cool to watch. One, your explosions, and two, oh man, when you do, they call it a TACP shoot, which basically means you're shooting for air, and they're practicing, their gun runs on stuff, and so you'll pop a loom for them at night, and then you'll see them at the what the hell, blanking on the name. Just see the attack helicopters come in and do their strafing runs, and you hear the loud ripping, which is them unloading with their machine guns, and then their rockets and stuff, and you're going to see all that's pretty cool. Especially when you see the ricochets from their machine guns, because they have tracers within it, and so the rounds are just bouncing off the ground, and some of them start shooting off into the sky and stuff. It's pretty cool. But yeah, all right, guys. I appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. Once again, if I forgot your question, I apologize. I thought I got them all, but maybe I didn't. So feel free to hit me up. Let me know, and I will do my best to answer. If I get enough questions, I will have another question and answers here, in the next week or two. All right, guys. Super Fi.